Hi, everyone. It's Kirby. Today is Sunday, June 16th. It is Father's Day. So, for those of you who are dads and staying in touch with my podcast and my articles to keep your family safe, um, thank you. You know, it takes it takes a strong man to understand the role that a good father plays and a good husband plays in the family unit. So thank you to all of the good fathers. On the same note, to all of the fathers such as Leslie Wexner, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, Henry Jarecki, the now infamous MK Ultra psychiatrist that Jeffrey Epstein turned to as his number one shrink in New York, where he sent all of the trafficked victims for apparently drugs and or God knows what else. Before I get started, like the podcast. It helps with the algorithm. So this is basically to let you know that I have noticed, just like what happened to me in November of 2022, that my Twitter account, now called X, disappeared. I've noticed that a couple of people who had inside information, who were also on the platform, and who have been following my work from like literally almost day one, so for close to 5 years, because I began talking to the public via Twitter and my books and almost everywhere I could get myself heard, including, I believe, even here, after Epstein was arrested on July 6th of 2019, which will be 5 years next month. So I noticed that a couple of the people who have been up close and personal, such as people living in New Mexico who had access to information on Zorro Ranch, or people who had access to other information because they were victims, and or people who had been really deep diving, their accounts have been removed. So if you connect too many of these dots, and believe me, there are a lot, and the only reason there are a lot of so-called dots is because this is it's a much broader story, much broader scandal, a much broader cover-up than mainstream media or any independent journalist that I have seen has been able to come close to understanding. It's not just that it's multi-generational, which I've been telling you for years. It's that it spans multiple platforms, such as Hollywood, the music industry, the medical community, the apparel and fashion industry, such as we saw with Victoria's Secret and Leslie Wexner. The fact that intelligence has their reach into all of the books, theater productions, plays, TV, cartoons, the popular songs, the popular sort of icons that most people follow. There's a reason for all of this. Now, granted, we know that it is not within the scope or the legal framework of the three-letter agency that I'm referring to have anything to do with the citizens of the US. However, from its inception, and even before then, the citizens of the US have been, I don't want to use I will spell it SPIED, right? So there has been that, and there has been infiltration, as I have explained to you many times, into the grassroots movements that show up time and time again. My part one on the Jarecki family, because 3 of the 4 sons are movie producers, which include so-called documentaries. And I have to say so-called documentaries because what they leave out, what they omit, says more about the true nature of these so-called, again, documentaries, I can't help myself, than it does about the documentaries themselves. So part 1 dropped today. I kind of almost want to read you something that was just sent to me by one of my subscribers, and I can't get to that page, but he said something about, oh, this is great. You know, you seem to be able to find things that nobody else has. Well, yeah, there's a reason for that, because I was in that world and I had access to knowledge that, in my case, the people that were close to the person who, and you know, I'm going to try to stay away from the SLAVE term, that pursued me into trapping me into that role for a long time, and about whom I wrote a book, The Billionaire's Woman. If you haven't read it, you should. It's my memoir. I knew that among his best friends was a Hollywood producer that did a lot of work with Michael Jackson, in fact, produced Thriller, and a fashion designer that worked with people such as Naomi Campbell, whom you may recall was photographed with Virginia Giuffre, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jeffrey Epstein on a yacht in France while celebrating her 30th birthday. So, like, I have and of course, you know, I knew about all of the trips to Hollywood and to the White House, and I accompanied him on some of these trips, of course, during that time. So that the recent lawsuit against Henry Jarecki by a woman who was part of the Epstein blank, and who claims in her lawsuit that she was then sent to Dr. Jarecki. I'm going to be polite, and I'm going to call him Dr. Jarecki on this platform for treatment. We know what that means. It means D-U-R, no, I'm sorry, yeah, D-U-R-G-S, right? And or God knows what else, because it's MK Ultra stuff, all right? So God knows what other kind of mind control stuff we've been dealing with, except that you're not going to hear it from mainstream media, clearly. Mainstream media has been very kind with the 3-letter agency, but it's a real program. You know, you could look it up. It's got a Wikipedia page. You can just download a lot of whatever our archival material from CIA reading room and or the FBI reading room from their websites. Not that you'll get a lot, because as we know, a lot of those documents were shredded, and of course, then they stated during the church committee hearings that the program was found to be, quote, ineffective, that, quote, it didn't work, that they terminated it. Sure. And we all believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, obviously. In any event, part 1 of my very deep dive into the Jarecki family dropped earlier this morning. And I have information that, again, I haven't seen anywhere else. I name names. I even disclose the fact that a very well-known singer/actress accused and thought of as having made her first husband disappear, that's all I can say on this platform, may have been born with two genders, and I show proof. So I have receipts. I guess what I'm saying is, if you're not getting the information that I feel we should all be getting from mainstream, who are supposed to be the eyes and the ears for the public. And, it's even hard for me to say that because I think most of the people who follow me here know, and you're savvy enough to know that they're a buttress wall, that they are disinformation agents, that they're narrative controllers. But I am upset because people that are not like us, that are not inquisitive, and that are not out there connecting the dots, rely on mainstream. In fact, there are a couple of podcasters who only refer to articles that have been written in mainstream in order to form the Epstein narrative. Well, you can't do that. What you really need to do is to listen to what the insiders know. Because by the time that is somehow morphed into a story that's printed by a mainstream media outlet and or put on whatever you listen to, should you listen to, I've just stopped doing all of that. Then, a lot of the real stuff simply vanishes, so that it does annoy me when I see someone who purports to be an Epstein. I don't, I'm going to skip, but I will say, who purports to be reporting on the Epstein story, only talk about mainstream media articles and not even make the appropriate connections as to what's going on. I feel that I know what's going on. It's a story I've wanted to get out for a very long time. One of my friends recently said to me, "Oh, Kirby, well, you have passion for your work." And then, I let it slide because I don't call it passion. So the way I feel about my work is, like, let's assume that someone is holding your head under the water and you're struggling to breathe and you can't because your lungs are filling with water. And that somehow, by a miracle, you're able to free yourself and you just grasp for a breath of air to keep you alive. Well, that's how I feel. For 30 years, I tried sharing at least my story because I didn't know at the time that other people had been turned into slaves. I thought I was the only one. And what I would do is I would comment on blogs connected to reporters who reported on financial crimes for, let's say, the New York Times. I would post comments, very lengthy comments, or I would write very lengthy pieces that would, some of them would stay in some places. Most of them were scrubbed. And so that after Epstein was arrested, this gave me the platform to share. And that's all I do is share, despite the tremendous amount of pushback that I receive. However, I'm really proud of my work. I am not, quote, passionate about it because clearly this is dangerous territory. We are talking about a minefield of criminal-minded psychopaths. I'm going to repeat that. We are dealing with criminal-minded psychopaths. So this is not something I would like to do. Another one of my friends said, I think it was yesterday or the day before, oh, no, well, it's your hobby. Hobby? No, my hobbies are traveling, photography, doing many other things. This would not have been my hobby, taking on the most powerful network that has existed. I'm going to rephrase that has coexisted with us for far longer than anyone has even an idea, is the challenge of for more than just one person, for more than just one woman, for more than just one voice. So I'm happy to know that many people are dot connecting, many people are offering their experiences firsthand to contribute to filling out the areas that are not as well known by other people. That's needed. We've turned into a community of researchers, and sometimes I get information that I don't agree with, and I have to be clear that, no, I don't agree with this. And, I hope that when I say that to someone, they don't take offense. On the other hand, there are times in somebody who, has been following for a long time will show me something that makes complete sense. And I'm very grateful for that. So I appreciate whatever tidbits of information you guys bring to the table, because collectively we can do this. That said, exposing the Jareckis and going into the nooks and crannies of this family, and I'm going to say it here, the Jarecki family, and especially Henry Jarecki, for whom Epstein had, I believe, 14 phone numbers. Perhaps he has the most phone numbers listed in his black book than I think anyone else. The only other person that comes close, I believe, is Clinton, and then Prince Andrew. Jarecki, from where I sit, holds a much more powerful position, and also sits higher on this tier of power. That is how I see it. And so if you haven't joined my Substack, that's where I have to put all of my information, because when I tried to put my information on Twitter for everyone commencing 2019, not only did I get pushback and trolls and whatnot, but the whole thing disappeared in November of 2022. I like to put some stuff on my Patreon. Usually I do that with shorter podcasts that are directed only for the patrons on my Patreon. And in that instance, it's because I don't feel comfortable putting it here, because who knows, who knows who's listening. This is a public platform. Here I feel more comfortable sharing different things like what I'm sharing with you today. But if you want my articles and you want my deep dives, you really should read what I've been finding about the Jareckis, which I include the people that they're connected to, the misinformation and stuff that is left unsaid, that is basically more important than the stuff that is being said through their films and their so-called documentaries. And by the way, I was able to locate the woman who filed the lawsuit against Jarecki. I have a photograph of her. She is approximately, I'm going to say approximately Virginia's age now, currently. She did come to the United States from France. I can tell you that much. And I have a photo of her with actually Henry Jarecki. Now, as an S-slave, you are required to accompany and I can't do anything except call them predator master of a master-slave relationship. But, you accompany them on outings, you go to restaurants, you go to the movies, you travel with these people, and you're supposed to appear as if you are not the trapped animal that you feel like, which is basically, what we saw in the photograph that we saw of Virginia Giuffre with Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell lurking in the background. Virginia has a smile on her face. She's posed in a little bit awkward position. If you're going to tell me here about her posing and that's not a photograph, follow somebody else. Warning, because I will block you from seeing any of my videos or podcasts here on this channel. Just FYI, because I believe Virginia. And by the way, Prince Andrew is aware of this woman who I found, and I published the very first photograph. I did blur her face, sitting at a restaurant with Henry Jarecki. She managed to get away. She is suing him. Regrettably, and I have to say regrettably, she hired David Boies and Bradley Edwards. I don't think I have to say more than that, do I? Although I did notice that a couple of people don't seem to know that they're also gatekeepers. But, this will play out the way it will play out. It will settle because clearly there is a big desire among these predatory men who are very wealthy and who are very connected to intelligence agencies to not disclose. Like, if you remember, Epstein took the fifth when he was deposed. Ghislaine Maxwell spoke a little bit more in her lawsuit when Virginia sued her for defamation. And that was settled the moment David Boies got into the swing of things. That was settled on the courthouse steps. So yeah, if this woman has the goal, and I'm hoping she does, and I have a feeling she may be listening to this podcast as we speak, then I hope she allows this to go to court for even a little while so that we can have discovery, meaning there would be depositions, meaning that we might be able to get more documentation about what has been going on. If, on the other hand, she allows David Boies to bully her, and I am using the word bully intentionally because I know how he treated Virginia, for example, and how he guided her. I'm going to use that term to be polite again. I hope if you are listening to this, take this to court. This is the opportunity of a lifetime for you to show the world and all of us who have been trafficked and who have been held against our will in a gilded cage that was full of poison. You are still alive. You've been able to regain control of your life. I know you moved back to your country. I know you are back in New York now. I know you started over, but this is your chance to help those of us who are still alive as well, who have not been able to get our abusers to be held accountable for their crimes. This is your chance to help all of us, including yourself. Don't just settle because David says so. Insist that this goes to trial. Insist. I read your court papers, by the way. I know that you requested a jury trial. Well, let this go to a jury trial. You can always settle a month into the courtroom proceedings. You do not have to settle before there's any investigation. You are perhaps our last hope, the public's last hope, for the world to understand what really happened with someone like Henry Jarecki, who learned his skills in Nazi Germany, paperclip type operation, paperclip type Nazi MK Ultra scientist, and someone like Epstein, who has been running what can only be considered an ongoing operation. You are perhaps our last hope. So don't settle. Take this to court. And for the rest of you guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for following me, for those of you who are new to my channel. And hey, I'll see you on my Substack. Enjoy the day. Bye.